Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the organizers for organizing this amazing workshop and dinner yesterday. My name is yeah, my name is Diego Alves, and today I'll be presenting with Sergei the work titled "Leverage Large Language Models for Metadata Enrichment and Diachronic Analysis of Chemical Knowledge in Historical Scientific Texts." This work was conducted also with Badr Abdullah, but unfortunately, and he, who is our LLM expert, could not be here, but we'll do our best to present. The work is divided in two parts, so representing part one, basically is how we can use LLMs to improve text metadata, especially with this type of diachronic corpus. And in terms of metadata, what I'll talk about is about the characterization of articles in terms of scientific discipline, semantics, topic, and writing summaries. And then part two is a study case about the analysis of how the chemical space changes over time in different disciplines, identifying periods of interdisciplinarity and knowledge transfer. So I'll start talking about the data. In our project, we're interested in how scientific English changed over time to become optimized codes for expert-to-expert communication. And also we analyze some of other phenomena happening, like knowledge transfer or identifying influential papers and authors. So for that, we use the philosophical transactions of the Royal Society of London. I don't know if you're familiar with this corpus or with this journal. It was first published in 1665, and it's the oldest scientific journal, and it still continues to publish, still with high reputation. And it played a crucial role in the development of scientific communication, establishing, for example, the peer review and paper publication. Some of the influential contributions that we have in the corpus is, for example, in the 17th century, the new theory about light and colors by Newton. In the 18th century, in the electrical kite experiment from Benjamin Franklin. And in the 19th century, the description of electromagnetic fields by Maxwell. But we also have some curious papers, such as this one. Actually, is the speculations of the changes like to be found in Earth and the Moon by their respective inhabitants, so describing inhabitants of the Moon. But we are not here to do fact-checking or scientific validity of the papers. We're interested in other things. In terms of corpus, what we have is we're using the last version, the RSC 6.0 full, covering more than 300 years of scientific communication from 1665 to 1996, almost 48,000 texts, and almost 300 million tokens. There are some metadata already encoded in the system. So we have author, century, year, volume, things like that. But in a previous study, there was a LDA topic modeling trying to define disciplines and try to classify the different papers. You can see here what LDA gave us, and you can see that it mixtures somehow disciplines, subdisciplines, and also types of text. You see observations and reporting. And we wanted to use LLMs to improve that and to have even more metadata. So basically what we are looking for is to do text cleanup, to do summarization, to access and retrieval, have information for that for better information extraction, and to categorize, then to feed some knowledge graphs. So basically, when we have a text like this, spotting one of the belts of Jupiter, you can see if you try to read the text, especially in this more like older style, it's quite it's more complicated than synthetically, for example. And we ask for a hierarchical categorization, discipline, subdiscipline, to provide index terms, and to provide a TLDR summary. For that, we used Llama 3. More specifically, we use this Hermes 2 Pro Llama 3 with 8 billion parameters, which is a fine-tuned model that's better for producing structured output. I'll give you, here's the prompt we provide the LLM. First, we define the role. We tell the LLM to act as a librarian, and we say what we're interested at, describing the corpus and the period of time. Then the objective, read, analyze, organize this large corpus. And also the goal to create a structured database and facilitate research of other specialists. We describe the input. We talk even about the OCR problems, and we define the tasks, the 4 different tasks. First, to read and analyze the provided article, provide alternative title, then provide a 3 or 4 sentence TLDR summary. C, identify the main topics. And D, identify the primary scientific discipline from this list. So we predefine this list based on the previous LDA topic modeling. And a subdiscipline, but for the subdiscipline, we don't give any list. So it's free to define the subdiscipline. We provide an input, for example, this one from Isaac Newton. So the title is a letter of Mr. Isaac Newton, so it's a very long title. And we give a text snippet. And we provide the example of output that we expect. So we see that the revised title is a new theory of light and colors, much simpler than it was. It provides the different topics, the TLDR summary, and the scientific disciplines, physics and optics and light. We just ensure that we put this final sentence saying that it needs to be a valid structured format. And in terms of some sanity checks we did, well, first of all, 99.81% of the produced outputs were in a valid format. And 94 of the predicted scientific disciplines were within the given data set of 9 disciplines. We had some hallucinations. For example, instead of environmental and earth science, LLM would give only earth science. And LLM also invented some novel categories, such as music. Here you can see the distribution of the different, so all the hallucinations that we got. We can also see that you have, for example, number 3 and 9, which were the index of the discipline, and LLM just consider the index as part of the string of the discipline. You have, for example, the 2 last ones, neurology and zoology, that could be sub-disciplines, not disciplines. So overall, but most of the papers were correctly assigned. Then what we did was an analysis of the Royal Society articles over time, according to disciplines. What we can see is that up to the end of the 18th century, we have a more homogeneous distribution in terms of disciplines. And we can really see the peak of chemical articles in the end of the 18th century, corresponding to the chemical revolution. And then chemistry becomes one of the main pillars of the Royal Society. And we see that from 19th century and towards the 20th century, we have these 3 main pillars, like biology, physics, and chemistry. And we also did a first analysis of, so we take the text from the summaries, and then we do this projection, and we can see how the different disciplines are distributed in this space. We see the overlap between chemistry, physics, and biology, so chemistry is in the middle, and we see that, yeah, the overlapping areas. And we can also see that the 3, like humanities, astronomy, and mathematics, more like isolated clusters in this projection. Of course, this corresponds to all Royal Society corpus, and we can do that diachronic, so we can see the shifts and the overlaps between disciplines over time. But now Sergei will use these results about the definition of disciplines to present the diachronic analysis of the chemical space.
Thanks. Yes, and for this part, we focus only on three disciplines that are most frequently encountered in our corpus, which are chemistry, biology, and physics. And in the first place, we had to extract chemical terms, and for this, we used Data Extractor, which is a Python module for automatic identification of chemical substances. And we used it 2 times. Actually, first one was on the whole text, but we got a lot of noise, and then we decided to apply it again, but this time to the list of extracted substances, and that actually helped us reduce some noisy output. And to analyze the chemical space, we used Kullback-Leibler divergence, and actually we used it in 2 different ways. So first, we focused on the disciplines independently and analyzed the evolution of the chemical space along the timeline. And for example, we can think of it in the following way. Let's say we take the year 1700, then we compare 20 years before this date with the 20 years after this date, then we slide 5 years on the timeline and again compare to 20 years periods, and so on and so forth until we reach the end of the timeline. And this basically allowed us to trace the evolution of chemical space in each discipline. And the second type of analysis was pairwise comparison of chemistry with physics and biology, but this time based on 50 years period. So, and in terms of results, here we have the KLD per discipline. And as we can see, the trend is quite similar across the disciplines, with the peaks and troughs occurring roughly in the same period. And towards the end of the timeline, we see that the plots become quite flat and the overall KLD decreases, meaning that there is less variation between future and past periods. Now, let's focus on this peak that we have in the late 18th century. And what also KLD allows us to do is to zoom in and look which features contribute to the divergence. In our case, we look at the chemical substances that are responsible for this change. And what we see, for example, is that in biology and physics, we have 1 or 2 elements that have extremely high KLD in comparison to the rest, and they are basically pushing the change. But in terms of substances, we see that basically we see the same elements in chemistry, biology, and physics. But this changes significantly if we look at a more later period, like second half of the 19th century. Here, first of all, the graphs for biology and physics are much more populated, and the individual contributions of elements are much more uniform. And in terms of the substances, we see, for example, that biology starts to evolve in the direction of biochemistry, while chemistry and physics rather look at noble gases and radioactive elements that were actually discovered towards the end of the 19th century. And we also confirmed these results with our pairwise comparison. So, for example, if we look at chemistry and biology in the second half of the 20th century, that's what basically these word clouds represent, we see again more substances in the biology word cloud. We see more substances related to biochemical processes in living organisms, while in chemistry we see substances that are related to the field of organic chemistry, like, for example, hydrocarbons, benzene, and so on. And here, if we compare physics with chemistry, we see more metals, more noble gases here, and also different types of metals, rare earth metals, semi-metals, radioactive metals. So this also helps us identify these thematic differences between the disciplines. And this pairwise comparison, what's also interesting, it helped us detect actually cases of what we here call knowledge transfer. And by knowledge transfer, we mean that, for example, one element was first ranked as distinctive of chemistry in an earlier period, and then as we move along the timeline, it becomes more distinctive of either biology or chemistry. And let me illustrate this briefly with the right graph. So here, each element has 2 lines assigned to it. For example, these pink lines show the distinctiveness of tin in physics and chemistry. The line for chemistry is marked with squares, and the line for physics is marked with circles. So basically, if we see a square above the zero line, it means that the element tin in this case is distinctive of chemistry, and if we see a circle, it means that it has become distinctive of physics. And we see this clear change, this clear shift from the first half of the 18th century to the second half of the 18th century. And we also observe similar things like in the beginning of the 20th century for some other elements. And in chemistry happened something similar also in the 20th century, but again, we see that the elements that become distinctive of biology are again related to these biochemical processes. Yes, and that's it. So as a wrap up, we successfully used an LLM to improve the categorization and topic modeling of text in our corpus. And then based on the results provided by the LLM, we conducted a diachronic analysis of the chemical space in 3 disciplines. But of course, there is a lot of room for improvement and a lot of things to do. First, we'd have to evaluate the output of the Llama model and ideally use also other models to compare the results. And in terms of the analysis of the chemical space, what we could do, it would be interesting to add more disciplines and compare, for example, chemistry and biology, and also conduct a more fine-grained diachronic analysis, for example, playing around with different sliding windows and comparison times. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So 1, 2, not 4. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate the ambition of what you're trying to do, and it's a great corpus. I don't know what the OCR quality is like, especially toward the beginning of that corpus. But I just have some words of caution, especially the first 100 years or so, putting on my historian hat here. I mean, sometimes the language they're using in chemistry back then, if you look at it, right, that they're talking about latent heat, you might say, well, those are biological terms. But no, they're actually doing what they thought of as chemistry. So how do you, by looking at specific terminology, how do you account for that? I mean, I don't know what this chem data extractor Python library is looking for, but I assume it's probably more modern chemical terms, and so you're going to miss all of that in the early stuff, right? You're going to miss the alchemical terms. I mean, that there's a lot of stuff going on there historically. So I wonder how you might sort of try to handle that a bit with a bit more historical nuance. Yep.
Yes, thanks. We actually had a problem in the earlier periods, and that's why we decided to run the chem extractor like 2 times. And for example, we had a lot of animals that were tagged originally as chemical terms, and yeah, that's it's definitely something that we would need to improve. And that's why also for the pairwise comparison, I started from the 18th century. That's where we start having much more correct data for both chemical papers and biology and physics. Yeah.
Yes, so we use this chem tagger that provides us already with some data. There is, for example, vitriol that's recognized, and I don't think it's a term that's still used. So for mainstream terms, it still identifies. But for sure, we need to check for this recall. Actually, there's one API for identifying by the Cas number in chemistry. You have a list of all the names. So we can also use that for a more a fine-tuned evaluation, especially for the recall about this chemical identification.
Yes, 2.
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. So I was wondering, I mean, you showed this plot, so you compare the KLD in parallel, right? So you look at biology, chemistry, and physics, and then you cover that. Have you tried it out to do it asynchronously? So to look for, I don't know, you keep a certain date and then compare it to the other disciplines to see, for example, like the KLD might be smallest in a later so in a later time or something, so indicating that the chemical space is closest at different time at different times, which might be also an interesting an interesting question or historical question to see, okay, is there a delay in how the chemical space look in different disciplines? And when is that? And when is the overlap the largest?
Yes, basically, we discussed this idea, and then for sure, it would be nice to implement. That would give us, like complementary view of what we saw. So, thank you.
Malta, 3.
I wanted to ask about the classification of fields that you showed. There was could you comment on this sudden shift in structure at 1800? So it looked very much like an artifact. And did you look closer at that?
The other graph, no, the disciplines.
Yeah, this one. So there's
Yeah,
a very sharp shift, and I wanted to ask if you already investigated what that could be.
I mean, so we of course, we associate that with the chemical revolution, so we see that. But this sharp shift, no, we haven't investigated yet. But for sure, yeah, that we see this sudden shift in 1 year.
Take the microphone because we can't hear.
Just a quick comment. Isn't that when the part of the revolution, right? The
Lavoisier
terminology
defined.
didn't exist before then, right? So if you guys are looking for oxygen, looking for those terms, you're going to only start finding them at that time.
No, but this was done with the LLM without the chem tagger. This graph. This was just the input of the chunk, like 1,000 tokens for the LLM, and define the discipline. So in this case, it's just that we don't have any chemical annotation in the text.
4,
But
Adrian.
could be also for the LLM, that because there is this whole new terminology, that's something happened in that period, and it's nice to check. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
4, and then you were 5. Yes.
Okay, can I have 4 and 5? There are 2 Zoom
Yes,
questions.
yes.
Then
2 4s.
Okay. In the Zoom, Philip Meyer says, great talk and corpus. Question, can you say a bit more about the computing infrastructure and computation time for processing the whole corpus? And I read the second as well from Helena Cameron. How do you deal with spelling variation and special characters in writing? So computing and special characters.
Okay,
Spelling.
yeah. For computing details, maybe the question can be sent to me so I can really say. I know it was
louder.
I know it was a few days to process, but I don't have the exact idea. Badr would have to answer. So I think the question will be there afterwards, so I can answer properly. And the second question was.
Spelling.
The spelling. Actually, yeah, when the RSC corpus was created, so there was the OCR, and then there were many steps of improving the data, so correcting spelling so that we can have this homogeneity in terms of spelling all over the corpus.
Yeah, and in terms of spelling, we also have, for example, instances of where one element is spelled differently and where 2 spelling forms occur. And it's case, for example, of oxygen with the E in the end or not. So it's also, so we leave these instances, we did not correct it, we take it as it. And then it's also nice to see when oxygen with E in the end starts decreasing and the standard variance starts increasing. So we have it also in the data.
5.
Thank you. So you did mention knowledge graphs in your presentation, but it was not clear where actually you're using power of knowledge graphs. It looks like you're completely relying on LM without taking knowledge produced by knowledge graphs.
Yeah, actually, when I mentioned knowledge graph, is that how we can use LLMs to extract information from a large corpus and then feed a knowledge graph. So it would be an output, not using the knowledge graph to extract the information we need, but actually from the information we got to create knowledge graphs.
So to do it in more structured way, you should also connect to some ontologies. And probably it can also help to solve these historical problems when you have already human who connected things, so you'll get much more appropriate context for your LM.
Yeah, thank you.